Welcome to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show, sponsored by Indigo Communications. I'm Peter Martin. Alison McConnell and Tam McManus are here with me. Delighted to have your company, and thank you so much for the support from you throughout the season, subscribing, of course, hitting the bell and downloading our app. We really appreciate the great figures we've been getting on the podcast, as well as so many people now realising we are exclusively on our YouTube channel. So thank you to each and every one of you. It's been an unbelievable season. There's still more football to go, and a big game tonight in the playoff between St Johnstone and Inverness CT. We'll talk about that. We'll also look back at what happened on Saturday, because in the end, Rangers got their hands on the Scottish Cup, and our reporter Kerry Pollock was there.
Rangers 2, Hearts 0. Another 120 minutes for the Ibrox side, but this time it was all worth it, as now they have finally gotten their hands on some silverware. Ryan Jack was the hero of the day. Just in 4 minutes of extra time, he put his side ahead, and closely followed by Scott Wright to make it 2-0 to Rangers. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst happy to be signing off the season with a trophy.
I told him, it's the chance again to win something. We have to look forward and move on, and that's what I did today. And all the hard work we've done in the last couple of weeks, months, is rewarded today with a trophy.
A disappointed Robbie Nielsen says his side will take it on the chin, but is happy with what they've achieved so far this season.
We have to take that in the chin, move forward, and try and reflect back and see that it's actually been a very good season for us. We've come up for the Championship, we've finished third, we've secured group stage football, we've got a cup final, we just couldn't take that final wee step.
After a roller coaster of a week for Rangers, the Scottish Cup is heading home to the Ibrox Trophy Room in the hands of Giovanni Van Bronckhorst.
Yeah, Kerry Pollock was out there at Hampden Park to watch it all unfold. Extra time again. Did they deserve it in your mind, Tam?
Yeah, I think they did. I think over the piece of the game, they deserved to win. I think Hearts started strongly. I think they were trying to get after Rangers early doors in the first 20 minutes. I think they might have thought Rangers would have been heavy-legged coming back from Seville, and maybe still, mourning that defeat. But I think that Hearts had to score first. I think if Hearts scored first, it was possibly a different game. Sims had a great chance. But second half, I thought Rangers totally controlled the game in the extra time. They got the two early goals, and then they won the canter. Hearts, 2 hours without getting a shot on target. A really poor performance from them, but Rangers thoroughly deserved to win. Yeah, they just didn't seem to step up to the plate, the Jambos.
No, I thought it was very disappointing. I would agree with Tam. I think it was an impressive start, and then they faded. I thought they might have had a bit more of a go at Rangers, given the fact that there had been the physical fatigue and the mental fatigue from the performance on Wednesday night in Seville. The one thing that I would maybe say is that Hearts had brought a lot of players back who'd obviously had injury issues, and then were coming back with a view to getting into the final squad, and maybe you're not as sharp as what you would be if you've been playing all the way, but I think we would have expected more from them.
Yeah, as far as Rangers were concerned, it was nice for Giovanni Van Bronckhorst to get his hands finally on a trophy. He was able to lift the side, he was able to galvanise them after the disappointment of midweek in the Europa League final. But there's a number of players there that obviously will be maybe looking to pastures new, and I wonder if he's kind of discounting the fact that it's a rebuilding job, Tam, but I think he's got some significant players that he needs to try and fill the gap with.
Yeah, I think there'll be envious glances from other clubs. I think when you get to a European final, I think there's going to be clubs that are going to be in for your players. You look at the German sides, for instance. Ryan Kent, Morelos. I think they're in the last year of the contract. Are they going to sign another deal? Golson, I think, will leave. They're going to be clubs after Bassi. I think he's an outstanding 22 years old. Can play left back, left centre back. Got all the attributes you need to be a top player. So I think there's going to be a few ins and outs, and it's up to Rangers to try and keep hold of their best players. I think if they were in the Champions League guaranteed, then that would have been easier, and they would have had more money, obviously, to offer them more money in contracts. But I think they're going to lose 3 or 4 top players. I think they're going to replace them.
Yeah, and if Charlie was here, Bassi would be worth about 40 million right now, but the conservative estimate is 20, and probably rising, because if you look back over this week, bearing in mind he wasn't in the side to start with at the start of the season, Alison, he looks as if he could command a good fee for Rangers.
Yeah, and I think too he was mentioned in that Europa League team of the season too. I don't think that goes unnoticed. I think it's a fairly accurate barometer of players who have stepped up in that environment. I think the fact he's 22 is very attractive to clubs when it comes to getting them fairly young but first team ready and with a considerable amount of experience to go on and develop. I think Rangers will have real problems keeping hold of him, because I think when you're in that window, you're showcasing your talents and what you have. I think there's no question that they'll be interested in him this summer.
Yeah, strange situation. I mean, I think we're just waiting on confirmation from Allan McGregor that he's hanging up the gloves. But if it wasn't his swan song, then it was a strange situation to come on for 2 minutes to wave to everybody.
Yeah, I think he'll retire now, Alan. I think he's had a great career. You know, I think he's only a year younger than me, and he's still playing. You know, I played with Scotland under 18s, under 21s. You know, top goalkeeper, shot stopper.
Where does he rank in the Rangers all-time greats?
I think he's Rangers' best ever goalkeeper. Personally, I think he's the best ever goalkeeper. Andy Gorham would be up there. Stefan Klos wasn't at Rangers a long time, but for me, Allan McGregor, in terms of longevity and what he's achieved, what he's won, you know, I think McGregor's, you know, up there with the best goalkeepers that Rangers have ever had. Yeah,
high praise indeed from you, Tam, and bearing in mind that Chris Woods as well. I mean, they've always been renowned for some really good goalkeepers.
Yeah, and I think he's very comfortable in that company. I think when you discuss players like that, I think Tam's right. I think he deserves to be there on merit. I think he's been an exceptional goalkeeper for Rangers. I think to still be playing at the level he is, at the age he is impressive. But I think the fact he came on and the way he did, and the cheerio and everything, I think it's a matter of time now before you hear that there's a formal retirement in the offing.
Yeah, well, I'm going to put you in this position where you're going to have to comment on a column that you'd written, because quite simply you'd written a column, and I thought it was very balanced, on the view that Rangers had taken what is effectively a gamble on a player who did have injury problems, but he was there on a reduced fee that Rangers were contributing to Juventus for Aaron Ramsey. In the end, in my view, I thought it was a failed move and a loan deal. I don't think he contributed what they hoped he would contribute. What's your view now that we've got to the end of the season, Alison?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is a column is an opinion. It's just that is all it is. I think there's a real danger that you end up with egg on your face when you're asked to give an opinion at that point in the season. I think there's always a danger. I think the column caused a lot of anger on behalf of some people, but the point was simply that I felt as though it was a gamble, given the fact he had played so little first team football before he came to Rangers. I know the fee was vastly reduced, but in terms of Scottish football and in terms of Rangers, it's still a very significant weekly outlay that was paid, and I'm not sure that would be reflective in what came back over the course of the last 4 months. I think as an individual, he's a superbly talented footballer. I feel a lot of sympathy for him that his career is where it is just now, because he clearly has a talent to play at a significantly high level, but I think just the physical issues have been a barrier to that in recent seasons. But I think it pointed to the lack of a proper strategy, and what I think Rangers need to do, and you hear this now all the time about having a proper business model for selling players, is cash in on the likes of Calvin Bassey, is that you sell at the right time, you bring in funds that then you reinvest in your first team structure, and you have a very long term view of what you need in terms of the finances of the club, the running of the club, and what you need in terms of personnel to deliver the success that you need. And I didn't think Aaron Ramsey fitted into that bracket at all at the end of January, and that's no disrespect to the player himself, it's no disrespect to the ability that he clearly has, and if you look at his career, he had a wonderful career when he was fit and where he was. I just didn't think it was the right time for Rangers. Yeah,
as a short-term hit, it didn't work out.
No, it didn't. It was a bit of a flyer, I think, from Rangers. I think they've looked at the numbers and thought he was worth it. He was worth the risk. Totally agree with Alison. Never played a lot of football with Juventus, and you know, so many players have came to Scottish football with huge reputations from different leagues, different countries, and they've struggled. Because one thing about Scottish football, you need to be able to run, you need to be fit. You know, I've played with guys who were supremely talented with that by Hibs at other clubs, and the game passed them by. You know, it was a total different style of play. Joey Barton came up the road, another one. You know, Shane Duffy went back down the road and went back into Brighton's team. So I think it's a league where you've got to be fit and you've got to be ready, because when you've got a big target in your back when you're a big name up here, and people, you know, want to make a name for themselves, and they'll rat after you and they'll get after you in games. And I just think Aaron Ramsey was lacking that match sharpness, lacking that yard of pace to get away from people. You know, I seen him, he still had the talent, he still had the brain. It's just that little yard of pace that I think they'd lost by not playing a lot of football. And I think that's cost him, because if he was fully fit and really at it, then he'd have played every game for Rangers. You know, there was games he wasn't even coming on. You're thinking, Scottish Cup final, never come on. You know, you're thinking, well, I mean, a guy has talent, has ability, and what he's earning, he can't get on the pitch. So I do think it was a bit of a risk from Rangers, and it hasn't really paid off.
Yeah. As far as Hearts are concerned, although they were disappointing on the day, Robbie Neilson highlighting the fact that in his rebuild, they're maybe 4 or 5 years behind Rangers and Celtic. So, I mean, I wonder if they'll ever be able to bridge that gap. I know he's got ambitions, Robbie, and I like the fact that a manager says it's 4 or 5 years. That's him loading the bases to say this is a long-term job for me. But they very rarely ever get it. Has he got the nucleus of something special that he can build on, although he's losing, for me, one of his best defenders in Suter?
I think it's a real headache, actually, the loss of Suter. Sims too will go back, his loan spell ends. I think it's been a very positive season. I think you get a third place finish at a canter. You have to feel a success and an element of satisfaction at how this season has gone, particularly since I think there were criticisms about the way the Championship was won last term. But I think they will be disappointed at the overall performance in the cup final. I think they should have asked more of themselves. I think they should have put Rangers under a bit more pressure. I think they do have the capabilities of that. I thought it was a performance that lacked conviction and it lacked belief. In terms of bridging the gap between Celtic and Rangers, I think realistically it's an impossible ask for any team, given the vast chasm and finances and resources between them and everyone else. But I do think if you are going to come up to any kind of speed, then what you do need is a belief in what you're doing and a belief in the principles with which you play.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about long-term strategy. You know, they're tipped to look at players like Alan Forrest, who's had a good season, maybe bringing back Lawrence Shanklin. But of the players that are roundabout that have excelled or at least shone in this season that's just gone past, if Hearts had a recruitment strategy that was thinking to themselves, well, wait a minute, Celtic might go out and Rangers might go out and buy, you know, a certain level of player in Europe that's available, I think there's a lot of talent to be shored up in Scotland that could make them very difficult and a real thorn in team sides' Hearts if they were smart about it. I mean, Forrest, fine, great, can he have another similar season at Hearts if they were to sign him? Shanklin, we know, can get goals if you get him service. There are other players out there that they could recruit which wouldn't break the bank.
Yeah, I think they'll have the pick. I mean, there's players that are not quite the level of Celtic and Rangers. You mentioned one, Alan Forrest there. Regan Charles Cook could be another one they could look at. You know, guys like that who are maybe just not good enough for the Old Firm, but would improve Hearts' squad and their team. So
even Hungbo for me.
Hungbo, yeah, good player as well. You know, there's a lot of good players in our league. And Joe Savage, to be fair to him, his recruitment's been excellent so far. You know, he's been down south, he's got good contacts, and they'll be looking to try and recruit and make that third position their own. But I feel as if we were here this time last season talking about Hibs doing it. You know, Hibs had finished third and got to the Scottish Cup final, albeit lost, and then Jack Ross was out of job within 3 or 4 months. So I think there's no safe jobs. I think in terms of Hearts and Hibs, you've got to keep improving next season. If Hearts got off to a poor start next season, they'll be shouting for his head. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. So they've got to get the recruitment right. And if they do that, there's a real opportunity for Hearts to go and push away from Hibs and Aberdeen and the rest.
And with McGregor, if he eventually does indeed decide to hang up the gloves, I have to give a mention to Craig Gordon yet again, because just as it looked as if Rangers might have to avoid going to extra time, he pulls off a save which was just out of this world. For me, I think he's been the absolute top goalkeeper in Scotland this season.
I think he's been excellent. I think he was worthy of the Player of the Year mantle. I think he's been a huge player for Hearts. I think his leadership qualities and ability, I think he's produced performances that belie his years, and I think he still looks capable of playing on for another couple of seasons. He's physically in very good shape. He's still incredibly fit, incredibly agile. despite his years, I think you'll see him sticking around for a good while yet.
Yeah, okay. You can give us your view on the future, who you'd like to see your team sign, whether it be Rangers or Hearts from the weekend. But Rangers in the end win the Scottish Cup. The double was provided by Celtic, and the defining moment, I think, in the season for Rangers, the agony of losing out in the Europa League final. A lot of people have been talking about getting back there again. The recruitment, the money will be crucial for Rangers to try and strengthen the side. Who would you like to see them go out and pursue, in what positions as well? And Celtic fans out there, you can give us your view on how many players you think Ange Postecoglou needs to add. And I just wonder now, when you look at that last week, Tam, whether there's increased pressure, if that's humanly possible, on Celtic to look at what Rangers have achieved and think, okay, group stage, don't become cannon fodder in that, and see if you can somehow get a few more games, knockout games or whatever, or even Europa League, and have a long run in it.
Yeah, I think that Rangers have shown that it's possible. I think that they've shown that over the last couple of seasons they've improved every season in Europe. They've got a way of playing in Europe which is suited to European football, and they've done really, really well. I think the gauntlet is down to Celtic now. Okay, domestically, Celtic have won the league, the supporters are happy, but the supporters are not going to be happy if Celtic next season go out and get battered in every game in the Champions League. They've got to be competitive. Okay, I think they'll be, what seeds are the Celtic? Are the third seeds?
Pot four.
Pot four?
Pot four.
So they're pot four. So there's a real possibility they're going to get three very, very good sides, but they've got to try and be competitive. I think third place would get you into the group stages of the Europa League. You know, that's got to be the minimum that Celtic are looking for, to try and even punch above their weight in that division. So just have to wait and see, but they've got to try and be better than Europe. They weren't good in Europe under Brendan Rodgers, you know, and I think Brendan Rodgers went out and just played the way he played in Scottish football. I think you've got to be a little bit more pragmatic when you go away from home, rather than playing an expansive open game, you know. And I think that Celtic need to box clever, and they need to sign good defenders if they're going to play that way. They're going to play a high line at the back. They need to sign defenders or keep defenders with pace.
Yeah, and I'm intrigued by the recruitment further up the field as well. I still think once a Yeti goes, they need a striker to supplement what they already have, Alison. Or am I wide of the mark on that?
No, I think you're probably right. I think there were points over the campaign where you saw at one point it felt like a very bloated squad, and then a couple of injuries, and all of a sudden you're thinking they're in trouble in terms of attackers. I think he has options. I think Giakoumakis and Furuhashi will maybe compete for that central striker's berth. I think there's still a lot of intrigue over what happens with Jota and Cameron Carter-Vickers. And of course Tom Roderick's away, which I think might mean that Mattarelli, his greater involvement over the course of the campaign. But I definitely think they could do with a midfielder that just has a bit of bite, maybe a more physical midfielder in there, more maybe in the vein of Scott Brown. And that's not to take away anything from Callum McGregor, who's been excellent. But I definitely think they need at least 2 or 3 to come in minimum.
Yeah, it's perhaps the difference in how you like your football in comparison to myself, Alison. To be honest with you, she wants a battler, and I'm looking at thinking to myself, you want a Scott Brown style. I think Celtic need a number 10. Rogic is gone. I think
they need both. I think they need both.
Well, that's 4 then.
That's the minimum.
I think they need both as well. I looked at the boy Alan Campbell when he left Motherwell. I thought Celtic should have signed him. He's been player of the year at Luton. He's been absolutely outstanding there in the playoffs. He's a player for me that Celtic should be looking at. I think he's an outstanding young player. There'll be big English clubs looking for him in the summer as well. Yeah,
just out of curiosity now, we're obviously, you know, Steve Clarke is, as we speak, naming his Scotland squad. You know, we've got Hearts, so we're looking at some homebred players. Hibs will hopefully have a manager who can turn around their fortunes. Aberdeen have got to be better than they were this season. Is there enough talent coming through, Scottish talent coming through, that will fill the Scotland manager with confidence and us watching the game, that they're going to get game time? You know, Lowry, I think, will be an emerging player for Rangers this season coming up.
Yeah, I think there is. I think that's probably a younger age group at the minute. You know, for me it's 15, 16, 17, so maybe in a couple of years maybe you'll have a bit of quality coming through. But you're right, I think that the Scotland squad just now is pretty strong, but it could always be augmented by good talent. Alex Lowry's got himself in under 21 squad, which is great for him. There's also other boys coming through as well. So no, I think that the future's really bright for Scotland, but it maybe be, you know, what I'm looking at, I think it maybe be another 2 or 3 years before you see the real quality coming through.
Okay, just a little footnote to a podcast that goes out. I know a couple of former referees, Steve Conroy and Des Roach, have been very critical of Willie Collum. Bobby Madden's been in the firing line as well over the last couple of weeks too. I think the standard of refereeing has to improve, and with VAR coming around about Christmas time, there may well be a change. But between that time, the start of the season and December, I think we have to look to an improvement. I thought it was a wee bit out of left field and a poor show from those two former refs to say it's time for Willie Collum to call time. Maybe they were just trying to be explosive in their podcast, but you know, he got a few things wrong. I thought he got a few things wrong that I can fully understand why the Rangers fans were absolutely hacked off with him. I looked in disbelief at times, but is that enough to say, hey, it's over?
Yeah, I think it was a bit unfair. I also think it's been a perennial all season that we're discussing referees and decisions. I think I've been fairly clear for many years that I think professional full-time referees would help the standard. I think it would improve so many aspects of officiating in the game. I think VAR will help in many ways, but also it still comes down to interpretation. That I don't think you'll be entirely without controversy when VAR is there, but I think definitely full-time officials is a way to go for the long-term future.
Yeah, I often wonder, I don't know if it's I mean, they're claiming, you know, at times it was a fitness issue with Willie Collum. Does full-time refereeing make your eyes better, Tam? I actually...
Stronger contacts.
I was just about to say my point on it, and I'm not dismissing. I mean, Alison makes a good point on the fact that they may well not be distracted by issues where there are other jobs or whatever's going on in their life, and they have to focus on one job. That's a different argument. But for me personally, I think VAR is the real game changer, because if people do make mistakes, this is not going to solve it, but it's going to reduce the percentage, because it takes it out of their hands at times and then asks them to reassess it.
Yeah, I just think that the officiating right across the board is just poor. We seem to be talking about him every week, and Willie Collum was terrible. Bobby Madden was terrible. Willie Collum was terrible up at Arbroath. You know, 2 red cards. You know, and he's not in a good end of the season, Willie Collum, let's be honest. And Saturday, I thought he got the Hearts booking correct on Haring. It was a bad tackle early doors. James Tavernier had 3 or 4 fouls, never get booked. Rangers should have had a penalty. Stonewaller pulled him back. Yeah, and that's the decisions that I think that the VAR's going to obviously help. They'd have brought that back and gave a penalty for that, but it's like the old one when a striker goes through the goalkeeper and goes round the goalkeeper and gets impeded and doesn't go down and then misses. They should bring it back and give a penalty, but they don't do that. And it was the same with that. So I just think the officiating is just really, really poor, and hopefully VAR, you know, improves that and gives them a hand, because we don't want to be talking about referees every week ruining games.
Yeah, absolutely. We shall see. But if we're going to see a marked improvement, we might have to wait till the technology is in place in December, only in Scotland. Could you bring it in halfway through a season? Anyway, other news before we talk about the big playoff match, which is nicely balanced at 2-2 at the moment between St Johnstone and Inverness. But at the weekend, he put out his Instagram, he put it out on Twitter, he put it out in any social media you could possibly think of. The Bull Charlie, as we suspected, was going to hang up his boots at Dundee. Whether he hangs up his boots permanently is another matter, but my gut feeling is he'll end up with a coaching job down south, Ali, that might just actually force his hand.
Yeah, I think he's quite keen to go in and pursue a coaching role. I think...
I'm talking of Charlie Adam, in case I didn't mention his name.
I think the Dundee fans would be disappointed that he's not hanging around for another season, maybe just to give them a hand in the Championship, but I think it was increasingly inevitable that he was going to look elsewhere. But I think he'll be pleased that he had his time there. I think he was a Dundee fan as a boy. I think he'll be pleased to have gone up, but disappointed with how the campaign played out. Yeah,
I think he was a success in the 2 seasons, even although they were relegated, because if anything, the one thing that you'll look at from teams gone by, you look at the last 20 years, I mean, you have waxed lyrical on this couch about the joys of watching Frank Soze play football. You know, you can go over so many clubs who've all sampled someone who's come from a high level and has, for whatever good fortune, has ended up playing at their specific club. You know, I mean, I'll give you an example with Tam Cowan as well, who talks and raves about David Cooper in the twilight of his career playing for Motherwell. Charlie goes to Dens Park and he's head and shoulders above every one of them, Tam. And he can hit a 40-yard diagonal, he can hit 10 yards, or he can score an absolute raker of a goal. He was just a class act.
No, it was a great signing for Dundee, and listen, as Ali said, he's always been a big Dundee fan. I remember bumping into him a few times when I was playing with Dundee, and you know, he loves the club. He got opportunity to go and play with him, you know, later on in his career. Got the club promoted, which was a huge night down at Kilmarnock. You know, and I can remember how emotional he was that night, and then he played in the Dundee derby, scored in the Dundee derby, which is great for him as well. Also an assist for St Mirren. So he's ticked off a lot of boxes in terms of his career in Scottish football. Scored a raker against Hibs in his last home game. So listen, the Dundee fans have got great memories of Charlie. He's gave them big moments, and you know, I think now is the right time for him to kind of bow out.
Yeah, if anything, he was almost like just a little glimpse back into those. I'm loath to say halcyon days, because it was a club who paid exorbitant fees that they couldn't afford for the likes of Ravanelli, Caballero, Caniggia. I mean, it was incredible when you think they were all playing in the dark blue of Dundee. But for me, it was a hark back to that little period where Dundee fans feared no one when they were going into games.
Yeah, it's when you go back to that, it's extraordinary. But I think it was good for both. I think it was a move that worked for Dundee and it worked for Charlie.
Yeah, absolutely. We wish him well. Gut feeling is he'll end up in a coaching job down south. I don't think too many people might take the chance on him up here. Although I think Motherwell's sniffing about Steve Davis. St Mirren is well interested, and he's 37. And boy, if they could get him, that would be incredible. Steve Davis is, you know, still top drawer.
I'd be surprised if Rangers don't give him another year.
Yeah.
I think he's a top player. He cruises through the game. He played in the weekend there, brilliant. Any club out with Celtic and Rangers would take him.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, St Johnstone 2, Inverness Caledonian Thistle 2. It's nicely poised. Don't think Callum Davidson's that happy with the referee Bobby Madden from his previous exploits, but nevertheless they just have to get on with it. Nick Walsh will take charge of this second leg, and I think if you can split them and talk about a favourite, narrowly St Johnstone.
Yeah, I think my money would be on St Johnstone if you were forcing me, but I think Inverness have nothing to lose, and I think that's always a dangerous opponent to play against when you know that they can hurt you, and I think much will depend on the mental fortitude that I think St Johnstone will have, and I think having squandered that lead, I think it'll be important for them to get the first goal and just re-establish themselves across the tie.
Yeah, and Callum Davidson already saying that escaping relegation equally as good as winning a double.
For me, probably just as big. You know, an achievement. There's been a lot of trials and tribulations this year. There's been a lot of things the curveballs getting chucked at you this year. So, you know, I think for me it's, you know, be just up there, just as great as achievement. You know, it's not been a dull 2 years. I'm honest with you, I preferred last season. I think we all did, but I think this is why we play football. You get ups and downs in it, and it's how you deal with it.
Well, I think two things that stick in my mind with this, Tam, is full marks to the St Johnstone board. They could have buckled, they could have sacked him, they stuck by him, and I think he'll be a better manager for the adversity that he's faced.
If they stay up. I think if they get relegated, I think he'll get sacked.
Yeah.
Yep, I think if St John's get relegated tonight, he'll get sacked. I think they have stuck by him. They had to. They've won 2 trophies with them. But I've got a wee sneaky feeling for Inverness tonight. I don't know what it is. I just think they've got something about them. They've got a willingness, a desire not to get beat. St Johnstone absolutely battered them in the first half. It could have been 3 or 4-0. The game should have been done. And then 2 each. You know, there's only one winner. If I was going to be at the end, it was going to be Inverness. The St Johnstone players that I looked, they were all fighting amongst each other. No bickering. I just don't get a sense it's a happy camp, and I think if Inverness can get the first goal tonight, I think St Johnstone might crumble. So I've got a wee feeling for Inverness. Nothing really in the form or the game tells me that St Johnstone shouldn't win, but don't know, there's just something nagging in the back of my mind that I think Inverness might do it.
So a kind of a roughy hunch that you've got, yeah?
A roughy hunch I have. It's just, I don't know, just Inverness, they've 9 men against Arbroath, they held on, winning penalties, 2-0 down at home, tied, they're staying down. The rally back of 2 each, I just don't know, I just think they've got something about them, a wee bit of Real Madrid about them. Seem to be outplayed and then just seem to come onto a game and get a result, so I think that they could possibly do it tonight.
Yeah, okay. I'm looking away from him. There's a wee bit of the Real Madrid about him. He's lost the plot. Let's see if we can get Ruffy. Let's see if we can get Ruffy on a Zoom call from Cuba, just to add a bit of sanity to this. Okay, you're going Inverness. I'm going to go St Johnstone. What about yourself?
I'm going to go St Johnstone.
Okay. You can give us your view on that. It's going to be a cracking game. We'll discuss it on the programme. And of course, we are all the way through to Friday ahead of the Champions League final, Liverpool against Real Madrid. We're going to talk about the English Premier League shortly, but a couple of things that will occupy our minds. Scotland keeper David Marshall could be close to pulling on the Hibs jersey. He did tell me at the PFA Awards that he was coming back to Scotland. I automatically thought it was only 2 teams that I think are in, with a chance of getting him. One was Hibs, the other was Aberdeen. So it looks as if the Hibbies have got their man.
Brilliant, great signing. I think that Matt Macy's not been great this season. Dabrowski's a young, promising goalkeeper, but I don't think he's ready to be number 1. So I think you get a guy that experience. Goalkeepers can play forever. You look at McGregor and Craig Gordon, and I think Marshall's a couple of years younger than him.
37.
Yeah. So still think he's got another couple of years in him. So I think that'd be a really good signing for Hibs.
Yeah, I think he's a top drawer goalkeeper as well, and it will enhance the Scotland squad if he can replicate what Craig Gordon has produced.
Yeah, and I think he'll have eyes on that, on the becoming number 1 again for Steve Clarke's side, and the tantalising possibility as we speak now about a World Cup place. Obviously the qualifiers looming large, but I think he'd be a tremendous signing for Hibs. I really do. I think he's still got loads to offer. Very experienced goalkeeper and a very capable goalkeeper, and he's the kind of goalkeeper that I think changes games, kind of goalkeeper that saves you points, wins you points at key points in games.
And we always like to know that clubs are getting extra money. I mean, lots of the Premiership clubs will get a windfall from Rangers exploits in Europe. Of course, they always get a windfall from teams going into the Champions League as well. And Ross County are going to get an extra little bonus because Ross Stewart was part of a Sunderland squad that got promoted.
Yeah, seen that. Brilliant, great. The more money the better for Scottish clubs. There's a lot of money going round, so fair play to the teams at Celtic Rangers that have done really well, and they're feeling the benefits of that. And great for Ross Stewart. I think he started off his career in the juniors. Brilliant for him to be at Sunderland scoring the playoff game. I think there was about 50,000, 60,000 Sunderland fans that travelled down. So what a buzz that must have been for him. And again, I think they're trying to get him on a new contract. But there'll be a lot of clubs looking at Big Ross, the Loch Ness Drogba.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a line for everything today. Tam's in one of those. You can tell he's ready for the end of the season and the holidays. Although I have noticed, by the way, they won't. Lots of people won't notice this in the podcast. But are you insanely going for a beard moustache throughout the summer? Because it's not going to be your natural hair colour. I'm seeing a bit of Roy Keane there with the grey bits coming through.
I'm just going to go for a bit of Roy Keane. I'm just going to start hammering people.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you mean start? You mean continue? Are you going to go for the beard?
No, it's going to come off. My wife hates it, so it's going to come off shortly.
Yeah,
absolutely. Too lazy.
Absolutely. And again, for the benefit of people on the podcast, very difficult for Tam to make any decisions because his wife is the power in that relationship, Ali. There's no doubt. If Tam has to go home early, Tam's going home early. That's it. So you can tell when she has spoken. He's off in the car and that's him. Goodbye. We've seen it all season, haven't we, Ali?
Indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ali, who's refusing to comment, it always delivers. When Ali doesn't want to give you any comment on something, she uses one word and then a full stop, which means move on, Peter. I'm not going to comment on it anyway. Apart from anything else, there was a moment when I started to dream yesterday, Alison, and that moment was when Philip Coutinho put the ball in the back of the net. Villa are 2-0 up, and I'm thinking, come on, Liverpool, this is the dream of all dreams.
You could sense it. You could just sense the tension at Anfield. They were almost welling the ball into the net. They were getting so frustrated and getting quite panicked almost. They were in the desperation to find the goal. They were getting a bit more harried than normal. and then of course you have the sickener, like 3 goals in 5 minutes or so. But it was fantastic drama from a neutral's perspective to be watching it. It's incredibly exciting. It makes you wonder who doesn't like football and who doesn't enjoy that kind of theatre. But I think it reflects well on Man City as a squad and the courage, I think, to hang on in when you're 2-0 down and go again, just rouse yourself to go again and to get the goals that matter. But I felt for Liverpool, I think they did their job eventually, got it, and just when you see the crowd and you see the kids crying in the crowd and stuff like that, it's
magical, isn't it?
Sometimes it's just a brute.
Yeah, I was crying in the house.
Yeah, no, and I'm crying there in the house. I'm only kidding. I mean, honestly, there's nothing worse for a kid who's heartbroken because they are the innocence of it. They want their team to win. But I always felt, I looked at the clock, I think it was something like 65 minutes, and Villa were 2-0 up, and I thought, this Man City side can dismantle anybody.
But they weren't playing well at all. They were looked as if I thought they were going to bottle it. And as Ali said, they had the courage for them to come back and win that game. 2-0 down. I think they scored in the 74th minute to go 2-1. And you think, surely no. But brilliant. But Wolves had a load of chances. So did Aston Villa. So it was. I mean, it could have easily have been both teams, losing. And Man City winning it by default kind of thing. But the fact that both teams come back and won, both can look in the mirror and say they've done their job on the day, and it just wasn't to be for Liverpool, unfortunately.
Yeah, here's both managers offering their reaction, Pep and Klopp.
The boys played an incredible season. The whole journey of 21-22 so far is absolutely exceptional. I think the game today showed again so much about these boys.
The Premier League, I'm not saying is better or more important than Champions League. I would not say that, but this is the most honest one. This is not Premier League. Don't lie. It's 38 games away, home. Many problems, all the teams. And at the end, who wins is because who was the best.
Yeah, incredible. And yet again, Tam, I hate to be a killjoy on all this, but fans onto the park at the end. And Olsen, obviously, I think a lot of managers are now worried about it. I mentioned it to you last week about potentially players being attacked. And this is what Steven Gerrard was so miffed about, and it's dangerous.
Shocking. I mean, a guy slapped in the back of the head running on the park. I mean, people are just running on thinking they can do what they want. I don't know if that's just a sign of the times and a sign of the world we're living in now. But it's really, really dangerous, and something's got to be done about it. Deducted points, closed door games behind closed door games for people running on the pitch. I think this summer, the English FA, everybody has to get together and go, listen, this is what's going to happen if people start running on the park again and assaulting players. There's got to be a greater punishment.
Well, it's an easy punishment for me, Alison. Basically, you have so many of the fans registered for season tickets. You have so many that are easily identifiable who are sitting in a seat. And the message should just come over the tannoy. If you run onto the park, you are banned indefinitely from this ground. It's up to you. Take your chance. Even if you are a small boy and you want to run on and try and get somebody's strip, you run on. You run the risk.
I would agree. I think you have to have much harsher penalties for it, because it's a matter of time before you have a more serious assault. And apart from anything else, it really just detracted from Man City's day. You don't get the opportunity then to really enjoy the occasion, the drama of it all, the nature of the win. I think you should be allowed to savour it. You want to have a party with your supporters. I think it spoils that. But I think there has to be greater sanction, and I think clubs need to have their hand forced into doing it, and if that means docking points or playing with sections closed, then so be it. But I think you have to be seen to do something about it, because what you've seen over the course of the last 2 or 3 seasons is a real steady increase of it.
Yeah, and if the top was nail-biting to say the least, what about the bottom end? Because suddenly Burnley relegated, and I agree with one certain pundit who said no sympathy for Burnley whatsoever. I thought it was a disgrace they sacked Sean Dyche as the manager, and they got their comeuppance.
Yeah, I was quite happy with that as well. Not against Burnley as a club, but I just thought the decision to sack Sean Dyche was shocking, and they showed no loyalty whatsoever. And I like to see chairman and the money men getting hit in the pocket when that happens, and they've certainly been hit in the pocket. They're going to lose a fortune. And Leeds, for me, I just like Leeds. I think they're exciting to watch. I think they score a lot of goals, they concede a lot of goals, so they're, for a neutral, I think they're probably better to watch than Burnley. So fair play. Listen, there's going to be some big clubs coming up, and Burnley unfortunately have been in the Premier League for quite a long time. They could struggle to get back up into the Premier League for a number of years.
You could see what it meant to Leeds United. Crazy.
It's such a long time too for them to get back in. I think just to cement it and have another season. I agree with Tam. I like watching them. I think they're so open that you're going to be entertained. I think fantastic pedigree, great history about Leeds, and I think they are a Premier League club. Yeah,
here are the results from the English Premier League. Over the course of the Sunday, Crystal Palace 1, Manchester United 0. Amazing, nobody really mentioning Manchester United. It was incredible when you consider they're always usually in the mix. Arsenal 5, Everton 1, Chelsea 2, Watford 1, Leicester City 4, Southampton 1, Brentford 1, Leeds 2, Burnley 1, Newcastle United 2, and of course Man City 3-2 over Aston Villa. Tottenham hit 5 against Norwich. Brighton defeated West Ham by 3-1, and of course Liverpool doing the business ahead of the Champions League, Tam, where of course I think Jurgen Klopp, there was a moment when I think he realised, wait a minute, this is on, I'm going to have to put the big guns on and see if we can snatch the title as well. But Virgil van Dijk, I think he just wanted to wrap him in cotton wool for the match against Real Madrid on Saturday.
Yeah, he's so important. Van Dijk, he's best defender in the world for me, there's no doubt about that. He's a top player, and I think he's a guy that you would miss most if he picked up an injury. So I think they were looking ahead obviously at the final, him and Konate possibly plays as 2 centre-halves. So no, I think they'll be looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the final. I think it'll be a good final. I think Real Madrid never take a back step. They'll not park the bus. They'll come and have a go at Liverpool. It should suit Liverpool. So I think there'll be a lot of goals in that.
Yeah, and I mentioned Man United there. Eric Ten Hag coming in, Steve McLaren and Mitchell van der Gaag.
3 Dutchmen in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'd love that, wouldn't you? Great to hear him in a press conference. Good old Steve McLaren. But nevertheless, Mitchell van der Gaag in there.
Yeah, I think they have a massive summer ahead of them. I think you cannot underestimate the scope of work that needs done just to win. I think unite a dressing room and get a team in the park that's capable of competing, because they have underperformed hugely over recent seasons. Ali, we're almost at the end of the season of our regular shows. We will have one-to-ones and specials coming up throughout the summer. You've won the Predictor League, you topped it. There's a meal coming up. Cowan's going to take us all out. What should be your favourite part of the season? Is there a particular highlight? Has there been a highlight this season? You can put me on the spot. You should give me a bit of time to think about it. I think you'd have to say Rangers' run across the whole breadth of the Europa League. I think it showed great courage at times. I think some fantastic scalps along the way. I think the manner in which they got to the final was to be applauded. I think there was great energy and verve and belief about their performances. I think that would probably be a highlight of the campaign. I
think a lot of Rangers fans will look back, once the pain disappears, I think a lot of them will look back at great memories of the run and what they achieved.
No, I think that's been the highlight. I think that Rangers getting to the Europa League final, I don't think there's, obviously Celtic done it, 2003, so it's been a long time between drinks. In terms of another Scottish team getting to a final, could be another 15, 20 year. Yeah. Unless you drop down into that Conference League, which I think is probably the weakest of the three. So
there was 2008 as well, Tom.
2008, sorry, as well. So I just think it's a great achievement. I think the highlight for me was probably Leipzig, beating Leipzig at home.
Yeah.
The atmosphere that night in Ibrox was incredible, and for them to beat a side that was heavily fancied to win it was huge.
And of course, let's not forget, Ali, Celtic fans will be revelling in Ange Postecoglou coming up trumps against all odds, and they'll be wondering, is he going to produce stage 2 with a few signings that are going to excite the way his Japanese signings have?
Yeah, and I think he's added a lot of colour, I think, to the campaign. I think you see his personality coming through in some of the media interviews. I think his humour would probably be in line with a very Scottish sense of humour. I think he's fitted in well. But on the park, I think the turnaround was was exceptional. I think he signed 16 players across the 2 windows, and you would have to say, if you to go through and assess them all, his return would be fairly impressive. So I think there will be a great deal of trust placed in him this summer when it comes to further recruitment. And he's spoken himself about saying this is the first phase, that he wants to take this team on to the next stage. And I think that's very much a European competition. So it'll be interesting to see what Celtic do in the window and how he improves them. And obviously, I think too, you had Furuhashi, who missed 4 months, possibly 5 months of the campaign. Giacomakis missed a chunk of the campaign with injury. I think they could be very important players next season if you can keep both of them fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the season is not too long away, because usually you have 3 or 4 weeks, but we've got Scotland on the horizon, and then after that you suddenly go into League Cup qualifiers and some Champions League pre-qualifiers as well, and before you know it, the season is back upon us. We've got lots of one-to-ones coming up in the summer. We've got dream teams as well for you to enjoy, and fingers crossed. Gut feeling, Ali, is the last word. Scotland, have you got a feeling that we can suddenly make it? Can Steve Clarke get us there? Ukraine, then Wales?
Yes.
There's confidence for you. Tam, do you share that belief?
Yeah, I think if you're going to get beat off anybody, you would get beat off Ukraine. So obviously I want Scotland to win, but if we can get to the final against Wales, it's a 50-50 game, and let's just hope Aaron Ramsey doesn't score a penalty to beat us.
Yeah, absolutely. There you are. That would be the ultimate, wouldn't it? Anyway, thank you to you for sticking with us and showing your support. There's lots more programmes on the way. We're back tomorrow. We'll be all the way through to Friday, previewing the Champions League as well. And tomorrow we'll be hearing from Steve Clarke and get his thoughts on the hopes and dreams of a nation looking towards Qatar and the World Cup. And you'll also have some great one-to-ones that I've got lined up for the summer as well. So if you hit the subscribe button, if you hit the bell, you'll get all the notifications. Thank you to so many of you who've subscribed to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel and downloaded the app as well. And the podcast followers, we really appreciate your support. You've been downloading in your thousands on a daily basis, and we really appreciate that, the ever-growing football family here in PLZ Soccer. So to all our team, thank you very much. We will continue next season bigger and better, so hopefully you will tune in and support us again. Join us tomorrow if you can at 4 o'clock. But from Tam, Alison and myself, Peter Martin, for today, thanks for watching.